The rain hammered against the lawyer's office window like accusations, each drop a reminder of everything Claire Hendricks had lost in the past 6 months. She sat in a chair that cost more than her monthly rent used to be, before the eviction, before the repo men took her car, before her brothers made it clear she wasn't welcome in the family home she'd grown up in. Her daughter Mia, 9 years old with eyes too knowing for her age, sat beside her coloring in a donated activity book from the reception desk. The child's jacket came from Goodwill, 2 sizes too large and safety pinned at the sleeves. Claire's own clothes, wrinkled from sleeping in them, carried the distinct smell of the downtown Portland shelter where they'd spent the last 3 weeks. Attorney Gerald Whitfield cleared his throat, adjusting papers on his mahogany desk with the careful precision of a man who'd delivered bad news to desperate people many times before. "Mrs. Hendricks, I'll be direct. Your father's estate has been divided according to his will. Your brothers, Marcus and David, inherited the family business, the house in Lake Oswego, the investment portfolio, and the vacation property in Bend." Claire's hands tightened on her purse, the fake leather cracking under pressure. She'd expected this. Her father, William Hendricks, had made his preferences clear for years. Sons inherited empires. Daughters, especially divorced daughters with PTSD from military service, inherited disappointment. And me? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Whitfield slid a document across the desk, followed by a single brass key attached to a leather tag. "You inherit item 247 from your father's storage facility. A vault approximately 8 feet tall, 6 feet wide, manufactured in 1952. According to the assessment, it's non-functional. The locking mechanism is damaged beyond repair, the hinges are rusted, and the interior is likely compromised. Your brothers declined to accept it as part of their inheritance." Claire stared at the key, its weight suddenly impossible. A broken vault. Her father's final message, delivered through an attorney who couldn't quite hide his pity. "Your brother's liquidating everything at the storage facility next month. You have until then to claim the vault, or it'll be scrapped for metal. The facility is in southeast Portland, near 82nd and Foster. What's it worth?" The question felt humiliating, but survival demanded practical calculations. "The scrap value? Maybe $300 if you can get it moved. The vault weighs approximately 4,000 pounds. Professional removal runs about $2,000, so realistically, it's worthless to someone in your financial situation. I'd recommend signing a waiver, allowing your brothers to handle disposal." Mia looked up from her coloring, brown eyes meeting Claire's with the same stubborn determination that had gotten Claire through Iraq, through divorce, through nights when the PTSD made breathing feel impossible. "Mommy, is that treasure's key?" The question landed like shrapnel. Treasure. What 9-year-olds called hope when adults had surrendered to reality. "Maybe, baby." Claire took the key, its brass cold against her palm. "We'll find out." Whitfield's expression suggested she was making a mistake, wasting time on garbage when she should be accepting reality. But Claire had spent 20 months in Fallujah learning that survival meant checking every corner, investigating every shadow, trusting instincts when logic said quit. The storage facility occupied 3 acres of cracked asphalt and corrugated metal, surrounded by chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. The office, a trailer with bars on the windows, smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner. The manager, a man whose name tag read Ron and whose expression read underpaid, barely glanced at Claire's paperwork before handing over a gate code and directions. "Unit 247's in the back row. Big one. You're the first person to visit it in maybe 15 years. Your old man paid rent through automatic withdrawal. Never came himself, just sent money like clockwork." The observation struck Claire as strange, but she filed it away, following Ron's directions through rows of units until she reached a structure different from the others. Where most units were 10 by 10 or 10 by 20, this one measured 30 by 30, the metal door secured with 3 industrial padlocks. The key from Whitfield opened the middle lock. The other 2 required combinations Claire found written on the leather tag in her father's distinctive handwriting. The precision of his preparation, even in distributing an inheritance he considered worthless, spoke to the man she'd known before distance and disappointment had severed their relationship. The door rolled upward with a grinding sound that sent Mia pressing against Claire's leg. Inside, darkness waited. Claire pulled out her phone, using its flashlight to illuminate a space that made her breath catch. The vault dominated the center of the unit, exactly as described. 8 feet tall, 6 feet wide, painted industrial gray that had weathered to dull rust in places. The manufacturer's plate read Consolidated Safe Company, 1952, Model TS, 3000. The door, thick steel with a combination dial and handle, showed signs of age. The dial was scratched, the handle slightly bent, the whole structure listing about 3 degrees to the right where the floor beneath had settled unevenly. But Claire's engineering training, honed through 4 years at West Point and 2 deployments managing fortification construction, caught details Ron had missed. The vault sat on reinforced concrete pads, custom poured to distribute its weight. The positioning, offset from a unit center, suggested deliberate placement to account for door swing and access requirements. And the walls around it, supposedly standard storage unit construction, showed modifications. Extra support beams, reinforced corners, ventilation installed higher than standard. Someone had prepared this space specifically for this vault. Someone had cared about its preservation. "Mommy, why is it so big?" Mia's voice echoed slightly in the empty unit. Vaults this size were used for important things. Baby, documents, valuables, things people wanted to protect. What did Grandpa put inside? The question Claire couldn't answer. She approached the vault, running her hands over the door's surface, feeling for anomalies. The combination dial moved freely, surprisingly smooth for something allegedly damaged beyond repair. The handle, when she gripped it, showed were patterns consistent with regular use, not decades of neglect. She tried the combination from the leather tag. The dial turned smoothly, clicking at precise intervals. When she reached the final number and pulled the handle, resistance met her effort, but not the solid lock of a secured vault. This felt different, like something was caught or blocked, not sealed. Claire pulled harder, putting her weight into it. The handle moved 6 inches before stopping absolutely, refusing further progress regardless of force applied. She released it, knelt down, examining the gap between door and frame with her phone's light. There, a sliver of darkness where the door had separated from the frame, maybe 3 millimeters, barely visible but present. The door wasn't locked. It was stuck. The realization shifted her entire assessment. A broken vault meant worthless inheritance, metal for scrap, her father's final dismissal. A stuck vault meant possibility, meant something inside might have value, meant this wasn't abandonment but preservation. "Mia, baby, I need you to stand by the door and watch for anyone coming. This might take a while." The child nodded, moving to her assigned post with the seriousness of a soldier accepting orders. Claire had tried shielding Mia from military language, from command structures, from the mindset that had kept Claire alive overseas but made civilian life feel impossible. But some things transferred regardless of intention. Claire circled the vault, examining every surface. The back showed no obvious access points. The sides, same story. The top, barely visible even standing on the concrete pads, revealed something interesting. A small vent, maybe 6 inches square, covered with mesh screen. She dragged a plastic storage bin from the unit's corner, stacked it on the concrete pad, climbed carefully until she could reach the vent. The mesh came away easily, screws rusted to nothing. Inside, darkness and the smell of old metal and something else. Oil? Preservative? Claire aimed her phone's light into the opening. The beam revealed interior space, shadows and shapes that suggested contents, but nothing clear enough to identify. She needed better access, better light, tools she didn't have and couldn't afford. The sound of approaching footsteps sent her scrambling down from her precarious perch. Ron appeared in the doorway, accompanied by 2 men Claire recognized immediately. Her brothers. Marcus, 42, wearing a suit that cost what Claire used to make in a month, surveyed the scene with barely concealed contempt. David, 39, dressed slightly less expensively but equally judgmental, shook his head with the expression of someone proven right about a disappointing prediction. "Claire." Marcus's voice carried the patronizing tone he'd perfected over decades of being their father's favorite. "We heard you'd actually shown up to claim this piece of garbage. Thought we'd save you the embarrassment of trying to move it yourself." "I'm handling it." Claire stepped between her brothers and Mia, automatic protective positioning. "You're handling it?" David laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "You're living in a shelter. You don't have a car. You couldn't afford a tow truck if you sold everything you own. You're not handling anything. You're embarrassing yourself and, frankly, embarrassing Dad's memory." Marcus moved closer to the vault, running his hand across its rusted surface with theatrical disgust. "He left you this deliberately, you know? His final comment on your worth. A broken safe full of nothing, just like you. The golden child who went to West Point, who was supposed to make him proud, but came home broken and useless." The words should have hurt. Probably were designed to hurt. But Claire had survived mortar attacks and IED explosions at nights when her brain convinced her she was back in Fallujah while her body lay in a Portland apartment. Words from men who'd never left Oregon, never tested themselves beyond boardrooms and golf courses, couldn't penetrate defenses built from actual survival. "If it's so worthless, why are you here?" The question stopped Marcus mid-gesture. David's expression flickered with something that might have been uncertainty before returning to practice superiority. "We're here to help you face reality." Marcus recovered quickly. "Dad's storage unit contract expires in 2 weeks. We're liquidating everything, including this monstrosity. You can either accept $500 for your trouble and walk away, or you can waste time trying to claim something that'll cost you more to remove than it's worth." $500. The amount felt simultaneously insulting and desperately needed. Claire had $83 in her bank account. The shelter required them to leave each morning at 7 a.m. and couldn't guarantee beds each night. Mia needed school supplies, clothes that fit, stability. But something in Marcus's eagerness, in David's studied disinterest, in their sudden appearance at a storage unit they'd supposedly never visited, triggered instincts Claire had learned to trust. They wanted the vault gone, wanted it destroyed, wanted whatever was inside to disappear without examination. "Not interested." Claire's voice came flat, final. "This is my inheritance. I'm claiming it." "With what money?" David's patience was eroding. "You can't afford to move it. You can't afford to open it. You're making a fool of yourself over a hunk of rusted metal because you're too stubborn to accept that Dad knew exactly what he was doing when he gave you garbage. Then you won't mind giving me the 2 weeks to figure it out." Marcus's jaw tightened. 1 week. The contract's been amended. I'm terminating the lease effective next Friday. After that, anything remaining becomes property of the facility, and we've already arranged for Ron here to sell it for scrap. Ron shifted uncomfortably, clearly caught between business relationship with paying customers and basic human decency toward a veteran living in her car. His discomfort suggested which side was winning. "That's not legal." Claire kept her voice leveled despite fury building in her chest. "The will gives me access until the original lease termination date. The will gives you ownership of a specific item." Marcus smiled without warmth. "The lease is separate, and as Dad's primary heirs and executors, we're managing the estate's financial obligations. Keeping this unit open costs money we don't need to spend on your nostalgia." David pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Here's the offer. $500 cash, right now, and you sign a release form giving us disposal rights. Or you can try fighting this in court with what? The $0 you have for attorneys? Your choice, little sister. Business or stubbornness." The envelope sat between them like a challenge. Claire could see the money inside. Probably 5 crisp $100 bills that represented food and gas, and maybe a week in a cheap motel where Mia could sleep without shelter noise and other people's desperation. Her hand reached for it, fingers almost touching the paper, when Mia's small voice cut through the tension. "Mommy's good at fixing broken things. She fixed our toaster and the car before they took it, and she helps Mr. Peterson at the shelter fix the heater. If the vault's just stuck, Mommy can open it. The observation, delivered with absolute 9-year-old confidence, shifted something in the air. Marcus and David exchanged glances that confirmed Claire's suspicion. They knew something, had heard something, feared something that went beyond simple embarrassment at their sister's poverty. 1 week. Claire let her hand drop from the envelope. I'll figure it out. You're making a mistake. Marcus retrieved the money, his expression hardening. Don't come crying to us when you end up with nothing but debt and wasted time. They left in a Mercedes that probably cost 6 figures, exhaust crystallizing in Portland's November cold. Ron lingered, uncomfortable, before speaking quietly. They're not wrong about the timeline. Lease terminates next Friday at 5 p.m. After that, I gotta clear the unit. But he hesitated, glancing at Mia. Look, I was Army. Gulf War, Engineer Battalion. I recognize the look. Whatever you're dealing with, I hope you find something in there worth the fight. Thank you. Claire minted. The acknowledgement from another veteran, another person who understood that some battles weren't about winning, but about refusing to surrender. After Ron left, Claire and Mia sat on the concrete pad, backs against the vault's cold metal, sharing a granola bar that constituted dinner. The storage unit offered no heat, no comfort, just walls and a massive safe containing unknown contents and borrowed time, measured in days instead of months. Mommy, why don't Marcus and David like us? The question deserved honesty. Some people measure worth in money and success. When you don't have those things, they decide you're not worth their time. But they're wrong, baby. Worth isn't about what you own. It's about who you are and what you do when things get hard. Like opening stuck vaults? Exactly like that. They spent the night in the unit, Claire having explained to the shelter that a family emergency required them elsewhere. The lie felt necessary. She needed uninterrupted time with the vault, needed to examine it without witnesses, needed to understand what her father had locked away and why her brothers wanted it destroyed. Mia fell asleep, wrapped in Claire's army jacket, using the activity book as a pillow. Claire stayed awake, using her phone's flashlight to examine every inch of the vault's exterior. The manufacturer's plate yielded more information than expected. Model TS 3000 had been Consolidated Safe Company's premium line, designed for bank vault installations and high-security applications. Original specifications included 3-inch steel walls, manganese plate reinforcement, and a time lock mechanism in addition to combination security. But someone had modified this vault. Welding marks around the hinges showed replacement work, professional grade, probably within the last 20 years. The ventilation on top hadn't been original equipment. Someone had drilled through 3 inches of hardened steel to install it, a modification requiring specialized equipment and expertise. Her father had been an accountant, methodical and precise, but not particularly mechanical. This work exceeded his capabilities, suggesting he'd hired professionals, suggesting whatever was inside justified the expense and effort. Claire's phone battery died at 3 a.m., plunging the unit into absolute darkness. She sat in that blackness, listening to Mia breathe, feeling the vault's cold metal against her back, and made calculations. 7 days to move 4,000 pounds of stuck steel and discover what was inside. $0 for equipment rental. No vehicle for transportation. No friends with trucks or tools or time to spare. The impossibility should have been defeating. Instead, it crystallized into the same stubborn determination that had gotten her through Ranger School when male soldiers said women couldn't hack it. Through Fallujah when every day meant rolling dice with mortality. Through divorce when her ex-husband said the PTSD made her unlovable. Through months of homelessness when conventional wisdom said, give up. Impossible just meant harder, not insurmountable. Morning arrived through the gap beneath the storage unit door, gray light that turned concrete and metal into shades of despair. Claire woke with her back screaming from sleeping against the vault, her breath visible in November cold, and Mia curled against her side, still dreaming. The child stirred, eyes opening slowly, taking in their surroundings with the resigned acceptance of someone who'd learned that home was wherever they happened to be. Her stomach growled loud enough to echo off metal walls. I'm hungry, Mommy. I know, baby. Claire checked her phone, now recharged from the portable battery pack that represented one of her last functional possessions. Let's get breakfast, then come back with a plan. The diner, 3 blocks away, offered a $4.99 breakfast special that consumed a significant portion of Claire's remaining funds but filled Mia's stomach with pancakes and eggs. Claire nursed black coffee and watched her daughter eat with the focused intensity of genuine hunger, guilt twisting in her chest. 9 years old and already familiar with food insecurity, already learning to make government cheese and shelter meals feel normal, already developing survival skills no child should need. The waitress, Donna according to her name tag, refilled Claire's coffee without being asked. Saw you two at the shelter last week. My sister volunteers there. She gestured toward Mia. Kid's got your eyes. Stubborn. The observation wasn't quite a compliment, but held no judgment either. Claire managed something resembling a smile. Stubbornness runs in the family. Sometimes that's all that keeps you upright. Donna set down the coffee pot, her voice lowering. Look, my nephew works at Pearson's equipment rental on 82nd. You need tools or gear, tell him Donna sent you. He'll work something out. Can't promise free, but maybe affordable. Why would you help us? The question came out harsher than intended, defensive from months of rejection and dismissal. Donna didn't flinch. Because I was you 20 years ago. Different circumstances, same desperation. Someone help me then, paying it forward. She walked away before Claire could formulate thanks, leaving them with a check that had been mysteriously reduced to zero and a receipt marked paid. Pearson's equipment rental occupied a lot surrounded by chain-link fence, filled with backhoes and generators and industrial tools that represented solutions Claire couldn't afford. The nephew, introduced as Tommy, listened to her explanation with the careful attention of someone who'd heard his aunt's stories and understood their significance. So you need to move a 4,000-pound vault, but don't have money for proper equipment. Tommy scratched his jaw, thinking, and you need to open it first to see if it's worth moving. Exactly. He walked her through the yard, pointing out options. Engine hoist rated for 2 tons would lift it. Pallet jack could move it once lifted. Hydraulic spreaders might force the door if leverage wasn't enough. The rental fees added up to hundreds Claire didn't have. Tommy stopped at a corner of the lot where older equipment sat waiting for maintenance or disposal. This stuff's off the active rental list. Technically can't rent it to you. But if someone borrowed it for a few days and brought it back in working condition, well, I'm not always great at tracking inventory. You let me borrow this? Aunt Donna said you were Army. Combat engineer. Tommy met her eyes directly. My brother's Marines, 2 tours Afghanistan. He came back different. Struggles with the same stuff you probably struggle with. Someone at the VA helped him when the system kept failing. Figure this is me helping the system work for someone else. The equipment loaded into Tommy's personal truck. An old engine hoist that had seen better decades. A pallet jack with wheels that squeaked but functioned. Hydraulic spreaders borrowed from the fire department trade-in pile. Enough gear to attempt the impossible. They drove to the storage facility in silence, Tommy asking no questions about Claire's circumstances, offering no judgments about her choices. When they unloaded everything at Unit 247, he showed her basic operation, safety protocols, and mechanical leverage principles. You've got maybe 6 days before your brothers pull the plug. Tommy surveyed the vault with professional assessment. This beauty's older than me, built when they made things to last. Whatever's inside survived 70 years. That tells you something about its importance. After he left, Claire stood in the unit with Mia and borrowed equipment and a timeline measured in hours. The engine hoist manual looked straightforward enough. Position under load, attach chains, pump hydraulic jack to lift. She'd supervised more complex operations in Iraq, coordinating crane lifts and equipment placement under fire. This was just engineering without the bullets. The vault's base made positioning the hoist challenging. Claire had to use the pallet jack to create enough clearance, working inch by inch, metal screaming against concrete. Mia helped by pushing when directed, pulling when asked, learning mechanical advantage through practical application. By noon, they had the hoist positioned. By 2 p.m., chains were secured around the vault's base. By 4 p.m., Claire began pumping the hydraulic jack, watching 4,000 pounds gradually surrender to physics and determination. The vault lifted 6 inches off the ground, swaying slightly, held by chains and hope and equipment that predated modern safety standards. Claire's hands shook from effort and adrenaline. One wrong move, and the whole thing could drop, destroying itself and possibly them. Mia watched from the doorway, eyes wide but trusting. If Mommy said they could do this, they could do this. The child's faith felt simultaneously empowering and terrifying. With the vault elevated, Claire could examine its base properly. What she found made her breath catch. The bottom wasn't flat. Someone had welded a false floor beneath the original base, creating a 6-inch gap between the vault's actual floor and the exterior bottom. A hidden compartment, built into a vault that was itself supposed to be secure. She used her phone's light to examine the gap, seeing darkness and shapes that suggested contents. But accessing it required tools she didn't have, knowledge she couldn't quite grasp, and time that was evaporating. The voice from the doorway made Claire spin, hand automatically reaching for a weapon she no longer carried. That's a neat piece of work. Someone knew what they were doing. The woman stood silhouetted by late afternoon light, maybe 60 years old, wearing coveralls that had seen actual work and carrying a toolbox that looked older than the vault. She stepped inside without invitation, moving with the confidence of someone accustomed to male-dominated spaces. Rita Kowalski. I own the welding shop 2 blocks down. Ron mentioned a veteran was trying to crack an old Consolidated. Figured you might need expertise. Claire's defensive instincts warred with practical desperation. Why would you help? Rita set down her toolbox, pulling out a flashlight with actual power. Because I built that false bottom 30 years ago. Your father hired me to modify this vault to his specifications. Paid cash, made me promise never to mention it to anyone. Figure his death releases me from that obligation, and you deserve to know what you're dealing with. The revelation hit like physical impact. Her father had commissioned this, had planned whatever was inside, had anticipated need for secrecy that extended decades beyond his lifetime. What's in it? Rita shook her head. Never asked, never told. Your father brought the vault, gave me specifications, paid for work. I welded the false bottom, installed the ventilation, reinforced the hinges. Whatever he put inside, he did alone. But I can tell you this. He came back every few months for 15 years, always alone, always careful. Whatever's in there mattered to him. Can you open it? The older woman circled the vault, examining Claire's work with a hoist, checking chain placement, assessing stability. The door's not broken. It's secured with a secondary locking mechanism I installed. Internal bolts that engage when the handle reaches certain position. Your father could open it because he knew the sequence. You're forcing it blind. Is there a way around it? Rita pulled out a stethoscope from her toolbox, the kind safecrackers used in movies. In real life, this doesn't work like Hollywood suggests. But with patience and understanding of the mechanism, we might be able to map the bolt positions and release them individually. The process took hours. Rita pressed the stethoscope against the door, listening to internal movements as Claire slowly rotated the handle. The sounds meant nothing to Claire, but Rita translated them into a mental map of the locking mechanism's architecture. 3 bolts, top, middle, bottom. Each requires the handle to reach specific position, then reverse direction before continuing. It's a sequence lock, mechanical combination separate from the dial. Clever. Prevents forced entry even if someone bypasses the main lock. Mia had fallen asleep on the concrete floor, wrapped in Claire's jacket, exhausted by the day's excitement and effort. Claire wanted to stop, to let her daughter sleep somewhere warm, somewhere with beds and heat, and the basic dignities poverty had stolen. But 6 days remained, and this might be her only chance with someone who understood the mechanism. Rita talked her through the sequence. Handle clockwise to first resistance. Stop. Reverse counterclockwise exactly 2 rotations. Stop. Continue clockwise to second resistance. Stop. Reverse counterclockwise 1 rotation. Continue clockwise to third resistance. Full reverse counterclockwise until the handle moved freely. The final bolt released with a click that echoed through the unit like a gunshot. Mia jerked awake, disoriented. The vault's door swung open on hinges that moved smoothly despite decades of waiting, revealing interior darkness that smelled of oil and metal and secrets. Rita handed Claire her flashlight. "This is your inheritance. Whatever's inside, it's yours. But be careful. Your father went to considerable trouble to hide this. People who hide things usually have good reasons." The older woman packed her tools, refusing payment Claire couldn't offer anyway, and left with a final piece of advice. "You got maybe 12 hours before your brother's here that someone was working on the vault. They've been watching. Someone in this facility is reporting to them. Whatever you find, document everything before they can interfere." Alone with Mia and the open vault, Claire approached its dark interior with her phone's light leading the way. The beam revealed a space approximately 5 feet deep, 4 feet wide, 6 feet tall, empty except for a single metal shelf at shoulder height. On that shelf sat 3 items: a leather journal, a metal box approximately 12 inches square, and a sealed envelope marked for Claire, opened first. Her hands trembled, taking the envelope, breaking the seal, unfolding paper covered in her father's precise handwriting. "Claire, if you're reading this, I'm dead and your brothers proved themselves exactly as I feared. The vault was my test. I told them it was broken to see if they'd fight for it or dismiss it. Their reaction would tell me if they'd learned anything about value beyond money. You passed my test by caring enough to try. Your brothers failed by assuming broken meant worthless. Inside the metal box is the real inheritance, not the business or the house or the conventional wealth I gave your brothers. Something far more valuable and far more dangerous. I spent 30 years as an accountant for people who shouldn't exist. People who moved money through systems designed to hide its origins. People who eliminated those who knew too much. I documented everything because I knew someday they'd realize I was a liability. They kill me, Claire. The heart attack the death certificate describes was induced. I'd suspected for months they were planning it, which is why I prepared this vault, this inheritance, this insurance policy. The journal contains client names, account numbers, transaction records, evidence of money laundering, tax evasion, bribery, and worse crimes I helped facilitate. I'm not proud of this work, but I was thorough. The metal box contains something more concrete, something that will make you wealthy beyond any measure your brothers can imagine, but also make you a target for people who've killed to protect their secrets. You have a choice. Walk away, let the evidence disappear, live your life in poverty but safety. Or open the box, use what's inside, and fight a war against people with resources and ruthlessness I can barely describe. I know which choice you'll make. You're your mother's daughter. She never backed down from a fight, either. That's why I'm trusting you with this, and not your brothers. They'd sell it to the highest bidder. You'll use it for something that matters. Be careful. Be smart. And know that I loved you more than I knew how to express when I was alive. Your father, William Hendricks. Claire read the letter twice, hands shaking, tears tracking down her face for a man she'd thought had abandoned her, but who'd apparently been protecting her in the only way he knew how. Mia stirred, climbing to her feet, moving to her mother's side. "What does it say?" "That Grandpa was better than I thought. That he left us something important. That things are about to get complicated." The journal was exactly as described. 300 pages of meticulous accounting. Names Claire recognized from news reports. Politicians, business leaders, people whose wealth seemed legitimate, but whose sources remained mysteriously vague. Beside each name, account numbers, transaction amounts, dates spanning 3 decades. This was evidence that could bring down 50 people, maybe more. Evidence that Marcus and David would absolutely want destroyed because their own names appeared on multiple pages. Her brothers weren't just executors of an estate. They were clients of their father's illegal services. They'd been laundering money through shell companies their father had established. The family business she'd been excluded from was partially criminal enterprise disguised as legitimate accounting firm. No wonder they wanted the vault destroyed. This journal was their destruction. But the metal box, when Claire opened it, revealed something that made the journal feel almost insignificant by comparison. Platinum bars. 6 of them, each approximately 10 inches long, 3 inches wide, 2 inches thick, stamped with purity marks and serial numbers. Heavy beyond belief when Claire lifted one, the metal dense and cold and impossibly valuable. Mia's eyes went wide. Is that treasure? Claire's mind raced through calculations. Platinum currently traded around $950 per ounce. Each bar looked to be roughly 50 pounds, maybe more. 800 ounces per bar, times 6 bars, times $950 per ounce. Roughly $4. 5 million per bar, times 6. The number was impossible, obscene, life-changing beyond any lottery jackpot or inheritance she could have imagined. Mia, baby, don't touch anything. Just stay exactly where you are. Claire pulled out her phone, hands shaking so badly she could barely operate the camera. She photographed each bar from multiple angles, capturing serial numbers, purity stamps, every identifying mark. She photographed the journal's pages, working systematically through the evidence. She photographed her father's letter. Documentation. Rita had warned her brothers would hear about the vault being opened. This evidence needed to exist in multiple locations before someone tried to seize it. The sound of vehicles approaching made Claire's military instinct scream. She grabbed Mia, positioning herself between her daughter and the door, hand reaching for the pry bar Tommy had left with the equipment. Marcus and David appeared in the doorway, followed by 2 men Claire didn't recognize. Large men, expensive suits, the kind of people who solve problems with violence disguised as business. Well, Marcus's voice carried forced casualness that didn't match his expression. Look what our little sister found. Guess the vault wasn't as broken as we thought. Claire tightened her grip on the pry bar. You need to leave. This is my property. My inheritance. Your inheritance? David laughed, the sound ugly and sharp. You think Dad left you $27 million in platinum because he loved you? He left it here because he knew we'd never look in something he labeled broken. But now that it's open, the contents revert to the estate. Community property, little sister. With executors. The 2 large men moved closer, flanking Marcus and David. Professional muscle, probably hired through connections her brother's criminal activities had provided. Mia pressed against Claire's back, small and terrified, and trusting her mother to protect her. The position reminded Claire of convoy duty in Iraq, protecting civilians while insurgents closed in. The fear was the same. The stakes felt even higher. You take one more step, and I'm calling the police. Claire pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over 911. And tell them what? Marcus's confidence suggested he'd already planned for this contingency. That you found platinum bars your father stole? That you're in possession of stolen property? That journal you've been photographing? It documents federal crimes our father committed. You really want law enforcement examining that? The trap was elegant. Call the police and invite investigation into criminal evidence. Evidence that would be seized, possibly implicating Claire as an accessory. Evidence that would disappear into legal proceedings while her brothers worked connections to make it vanish. But Claire had spent 2 years in combat zones, learning that elegant traps only worked when people followed predictable patterns. I've already uploaded everything to cloud storage. Photos of every journal page, every platinum bar, every serial number. Time-stamped and distributed to 3 separate accounts. You touch me, touch Mia, touch any of this, and everything goes to the FBI, the IRS, and every news outlet in Oregon. The bluff was partial. She photographed everything but hadn't uploaded yet. But Marcus's expression suggested he couldn't risk calling her on it. You're making a serious mistake. His voice dropped to something colder, more dangerous. Those people in the journal, they don't forgive exposure. They don't negotiate. They eliminate problems. You think you're protecting yourself? You just painted a target on you and your daughter. Then I guess we'd better make sure the evidence gets to the right people fast enough that eliminating us becomes pointless. The standoff lasted 15 seconds that felt like hours. Then David spoke, his voice carrying calculation. A deal. We split the platinum. You keep the journal, do whatever you want with it. We each walk away with something. Not interested. Claire kept her voice flat. This is my inheritance. All of it. You got the house, the business, the conventional wealth. This is mine. You can't move 6 platinum bars without resources you don't have. Marcus tried a different approach. You're living in a shelter. No car, no money, no way to liquidate assets like this without questions. We have the contacts, the accounts, the ability to convert this into usable wealth. Partner with us. We'll handle everything. 30% to you, 70% to us for managing the process. The offer would have been tempting if Claire hadn't read the journal. If she didn't know her brother's names appeared alongside murderers and criminals. If she couldn't see through the negotiation to the inevitable betrayal. 0% to you. 100% to me. Now get out before I start uploading. The two large men looked to Marcus for direction. Whatever signal he gave must have been stand down because they stepped back, maintaining position but not advancing. This isn't over. Marcus delivered the line like a movie villain, too obvious to be genuinely threatening, except that his access to dangerous people made every threat credible. You've got 6 days before this unit's lease expires. After that, you're trespassing, and we'll have legitimate grounds to seize everything as estate property. They left in their Mercedes, exhaust and anger trailing behind them. Claire waited until the sound of their engine disappeared before allowing herself to shake, adrenaline crash hitting like a physical blow. Mia's voice came small and scared. Are they going to hurt us? The question deserved honesty, but Claire couldn't give it. Not when the truth was probably yes. Her brothers would absolutely hurt them if it meant protecting themselves and securing $27 million. They're going to try, but we're not going to let them. We're going to be smarter and faster and more determined than they are. How? The plan formed as she spoke, pieces clicking into place with the strategic clarity that had made her good at her job in the Army. We document everything. We get the evidence to people who can use it. We liquidate enough platinum to fund protection and legal help. And we do in the next 6 days before they can move against us. That's not very much time. No, baby, it's not. But impossible just means we have to work harder. Claire began systematically repacking the vault. The platinum bars went back in the metal box, each one documented, serial numbers recorded, photographs taken from every angle. The journal went into her backpack, wrapped in plastic bags for protection, too valuable to leave unattended. Her father's letter stayed with her, folded in her jacket pocket, a reminder that love sometimes looked like abandonment, that protection sometimes required distance, that inheritance came in forms beyond money and property. Rita had warned that someone in the facility was reporting to her brothers. That meant surveillance, possibly cameras, definitely people watching for opportunities. Moving $27 million in platinum required planning, resources, and security Claire didn't have. But she knew someone who might help, someone who'd already demonstrated willingness to bend rules for veterans in need. The phone call to Tommy went straight to voicemail. Claire left a message that probably sounded insane. Need your help moving valuable items. Very valuable. Time sensitive. We'll explain everything. Please call back. The second call went to Rita, who answered on the third ring. The older woman listened without interruption as Claire explained what she'd found, what her brothers had attempted, what the next 6 days required. Your father played a long game. Rita's voice carried respect. Build a trap that would only spring when the right person came along. You need to move fast, though. Those men with your brothers? I saw them leave. They circled back, part 2 blocks down. They're watching the facility. Can you help me? The question hung in silence for a long moment before Rita answered. I can get you a truck. I can help you move the contents. But after that, you're on your own. I've got a business, employees, responsibilities. I can give you hours, not days. Hours might be enough. They worked through the night, Claire and Rita, and eventually Tommy, who arrived after his shift ended with an enclosed trailer and questions he was smart enough not to ask. The platinum bars, each wrapped in moving blankets and secured in plastic totes, went into the trailer first. The journal stayed with Claire, too important to risk losing. By 3 a.m., the vault stood empty, its secrets extracted, its purpose fulfilled. By 4 a.m., the trailer sat in Rita's welding shop's secure lot, guarded by cameras and Rita's 2 German shepherds who took their protective duty seriously. By 5 a.m., Claire and Mia were back at the shelter, filthy and exhausted and temporarily safe. Temporarily, because Marcus had been right about one thing. The people in that journal, the clients whose crimes her father had documented, wouldn't forgive exposure. They'd eliminate the threat, which meant eliminating Claire and anyone who helped her. 6 days to liquidate enough platinum to fund protection. 6 days to get evidence to authorities who weren't compromised. 6 days to transform from homeless veteran into someone powerful enough that eliminating her became more dangerous than letting her live. Mia fell asleep instantly, her body surrendering to exhaustion that childhood couldn't resist. Claire lay awake, feeling the journal's weight in her backpack, thinking about the platinum bars hidden in Rita's shop, considering the war she'd just declared against people with resources to destroy her. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We know what you have. We know where you sleep. Give us the platinum and journal by Friday, or your daughter pays for your stubbornness. This is your only warning." The message included a photo. Mia, taken earlier that evening through the storage unit's window, Claire visible in the background opening the vault. They'd been watching the entire time, had photographed everything, knew exactly what had been found and how to apply maximum pressure. Claire's hands shook reading the threat, rage and fear mixing into something that felt like fuel. These people thought a single mother with PTSD and no resources would collapse under pressure. Thought threatening Mia would break her. They'd miscalculated. Threatening her daughter didn't break Claire. It clarified everything, made the mission simple, made the stakes absolute, made compromise impossible. She pulled out her laptop, ancient and barely functional, and began uploading photographs to every cloud service with free storage. The journal pages went to Dropbox. The platinum bar images went to Google Drive. Her father's letter went to OneDrive. Multiple copies, multiple locations, insurance against seizure or deletion. Then she began composing an email to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, to the IRS's Fraud Investigation Unit, to the Oregon Attorney General's office, to 3 different journalists whose investigative work she'd followed. The subject line was simple: evidence of $2 billion money laundering operation, 30 years of documentation. The body contained everything: her father's letter, samples from the journal, photos of platinum bars with serial numbers visible, context about who she was, what she'd found, why the timing mattered, and a final paragraph that turned evidence into leverage. This email is scheduled to send automatically in 72 hours unless I log in and cancel it. If anything happens to me or my daughter, if we disappear or are harmed, this evidence will reach every recipient simultaneously. The people named in these documents will face federal investigation, asset seizure, and criminal prosecution. Their choice: leave us alone and this stays private, or move against us and destroy themselves trying. The dead man's switch. Insurance policy of last resort. Not perfect, but sufficient to make killing her counterproductive. Claire hit schedule, set the timer for 72 hours, and closed the laptop. Mia slept peacefully, unaware that her mother had just declared war on people who'd killed to protect smaller secrets. 3 days remained until the storage unit lease expired. 3 days to liquidate platinum and secure protection. 3 days before her brothers could legally seize what remained. But the real deadline was 72 hours. 3 days before the evidence went public and made Claire simultaneously untouchable and a permanent target. Some battles couldn't be avoided, only chosen carefully. Claire had chosen this one the moment she decided to open the vault instead of accepting her brother's money. Now she had to win it. Outside, Portland's November rain hammered against windows, washing away evidence, erasing footprints, keeping secrets the way this city always had. But some secrets were too large to stay buried. Some inheritance couldn't be stolen or suppressed. And some fights mattered more than safety. Morning arrived with the weight of countdown timers and impossible deadlines. Claire woke in the shelter's crowded sleeping area. Mia curled against her side, phone showing dozens of missed calls from block numbers and her brother's recognizable digits. The messages ranged from threatening to pleading to coldly businesslike, all variations on the same theme. Give us the platinum or face consequences. She deleted them without listening completely, focusing instead on the 68 hours remaining before her scheduled evidence dump went live. 68 hours to convert platinum into protection, vulnerability into power, desperation into strategy. The shelter's morning routine proceeded as always. Wake at 6, gather belongings, vacate by 7 to make room for daytime programming. Claire and Mia moved through it automatically, muscle memory from weeks of repetition, while Claire's mind raced through logistics that felt simultaneously impossible and necessary. Rita called at 7:15, her voice carrying urgency that bypassed pleasantries. Your brothers filed a police report claiming you stole family heirlooms from the storage unit. They're trying to establish legal grounds to seize everything. Thought you should know. The move was predictable but still dangerous. Once police became involved, even falsely, the situation gained official momentum that could override Claire's legitimate ownership. Can they prove ownership? They'll claim the platinum was a state property you removed illegally. Without the will specifically listing it, it becomes he said, she said. And they've got expensive lawyers. Claire watched Mia organize her backpack with careful precision, the child's small hands folding her spare clothes exactly as Claire had taught her. Military precision transferred across generations. Adaptation to chaos becoming family legacy. I need to liquidate at least one bar today. Enough to hire legal representation and security. Do you know anyone who deals in precious metals? Rita's silence suggested she was weighing risks against conscience, business relationships against veteran solidarity. When she spoke, her voice carried resignation. Victor Chun runs a metals exchange in Northwest Portland. Legitimate operation, handles estate liquidations, asks minimal questions if the paperwork's clean. But Claire, moving that much platinum triggers federal reporting requirements. Treasury gets notified on transactions over $10,000. You won't stay invisible. I'm past invisible. Now I just need to survive long enough to get the evidence to people who matter. The address Rita provided led to a building that looked like every other industrial warehouse in Northwest Portland's manufacturing district. No signs advertised services, no windows revealed interior activities, just a steel door with an intercom and security camera. Claire pressed the button, Mia's hand tight in hers, the platinum bar wrapped in a blanket and secured in a backpack that weighed approximately 50 pounds. Her shoulders screamed from carrying it the 12 blocks from Rita's shop, but taxis required money she didn't have, and Uber left digital trails her brothers could follow. The intercom crackled. State your business. Rita Kowalski sent me. I have platinum to liquidate. Silence. Then the door buzzed open. The interior revealed a space that mixed professional metals exchange with high-security vault. Display cases showed gold coins and silver bars behind bulletproof glass. A scale that probably cost more than Claire's car had sat on a granite counter. 3 cameras tracked their entrance with mechanical precision. Victor Chun emerged from a back office, 60-something, wearing a suit that spoke to success in an industry most people didn't know existed. He studied Claire and Mia with an expression that suggested he'd seen every variety of desperate person trying to convert assets into cash. Rita's referrals usually come with complicated stories. Let's see what you have. Claire set the backpack on the counter, unwrapped the platinum bar, watched Victor's professional demeanor crack slightly as he recognized the size and purity of what she'd brought. He lifted it, testing weight, examining stamps with a jeweler's loupe, running tests that Claire didn't understand but which apparently confirmed authenticity. His expression shifted from skeptical to intrigued to professionally neutral. Engelhard Mint, 99, 95% purity, 52 pounds, approximately 830 troy ounces. At current market rates, $950 per ounce, you're looking at $788,500 wholesale value. Retail would be higher, but I assume you need immediate liquidity. The number hit Claire like a physical impact. $788,000. For 1 bar out of 6. Her entire financial situation transformed by a single transaction. What's your offer? Normally, I'd offer 75% of wholesale for immediate cash. But this triggers federal reporting requirements, and frankly, the size raises questions about provenance. I need to see documentation proving legal ownership. Claire had anticipated this. She pulled out her father's will, the attorney's letter confirming her inheritance of item 247, photos of the vault with platinum bars visible, her father's handwritten letter explaining their presence. Victor examined everything with careful attention, occasionally glancing at Mia, who'd found a chair and was coloring in her activity book with the focused concentration of someone trying to ignore adult stress. Your father was William Hendricks. Not a question, a statement suggesting recognition. I knew him. He brought gold here occasionally, small amounts, always legitimate. Mentioned he was setting up something for his daughter. Victor's expression softened slightly. You're the army daughter. He talked about you. Said you were the only one with integrity. The observation landed with unexpected emotional weight. Her father had spoken about her to strangers, had acknowledged her service, had apparently thought more highly of her than his decades of distance suggested. Can you help me? Victor was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing business risk against personal connection to her father. I can offer you $600,000 cash for this bar, below market value, but I'm assuming time matters more than maximizing profit. The discount covers my risk if ownership gets contested, and I won't report the transaction for 48 hours, which gives you time to establish legal protections before federal attention arrives. $600,000. Enough to hire elite attorneys. Enough for security. Enough to transform from vulnerable target into someone with resources to fight back. Deal. The cash took 30 minutes to assemble, pull from a vault that probably held millions in various forms. Victor counted it twice, bundled it into neat stacks, provided a receipt that listed the transaction as estate liquidation, platinum bar, verified provenance. As Claire packed the money into her backpack, Victor offered final advice. Your father mentioned your brothers. Said they inherited his business sense, but not his ethics. Watch yourself. People kill for a lot less than what you're carrying. The weight of $600,000 cash felt both empowering and terrifying. Claire moved through Portland streets with hypervigilance. Every person a potential threat, every vehicle possibly following them. Mia sensed her tension, staying close, asking no questions, trusting that Mommy had a plan, even if that plan was mostly survival. The law office of Sarah Martinez occupied the 10th floor of a downtown building that spoke to success and expense. Claire had found her through online research, veterans' rights attorney, experience with complex inheritance disputes, reputation for aggressive representation of clients powerful entities tried to intimidate. The receptionist's expression suggested Claire and Mia didn't match the office's typical clientele. Stained clothes, backpack that sagged with cash weight, child carrying a worn activity book. They looked like shelter residents because that's exactly what they were. Do you have an appointment? No, but I need immediate representation on an inheritance dispute worth approximately $27 million. The number changed the receptionist's demeanor instantly. She made a call, spoke quietly, then gestured toward leather chairs that Claire and Mia were clearly meant to feel unworthy of. Sarah Martinez emerged 15 minutes later, 40-something, sharp-eyed, wearing authority-like armor. She escorted them to a conference room with windows overlooking the city, closed the door, and listened without interruption as Claire explained everything. The inheritance, the vault, the platinum, the journal documenting her father's criminal clients, her brother's theft attempt, the threatening messages, the 68 hours remaining before evidence went public. Sarah took notes with practiced efficiency, occasionally asking clarifying questions, showing no shock at the criminal elements or the danger Claire described. When Claire finished, the attorney sat back, considering. This is simultaneously the most fascinating and most dangerous case I've encountered. Your father essentially weaponized his estate against both his criminal clients and his corrupt sons. You're inheriting wealth and a war simultaneously. Can you help me? I can represent you legally, establish clear ownership, fight your brother's claims. But the people in that journal, the ones threatening your daughter, Law enforcement handles that, not attorneys. Claire pulled out the journal, set it on the conference table between them. Everything in here is documented. Account numbers, dates, amounts. 30 years of money laundering, tax evasion, bribery. My father kept perfect records. Sarah flipped through pages, her expression growing darker with each revelation. This is RICO predicate evidence. This is federal conspiracy. This is... She stopped at a page, her face going pale. This is Senator Bradley's financial crimes. This is evidence that brings down one of Oregon's most powerful politicians, which is why they want me dead. The attorney closed the journal carefully, as if it might explode. I need to make a call. There's someone you need to meet. The someone turned out to be FBI Special Agent Robert Torres, who arrived at the law office within 90 minutes of Sarah's call. Mid-40s, wearing the kind of suit that suggested federal salary, carrying himself with the careful authority of someone used to dangerous situations. He listened to Claire's account while examining the journal, cross-referencing entries against what appeared to be existing case files on his laptop. His questions came sharp and specific, designed to verify credibility and extract maximum information. Mia had fallen asleep on the conference room couch, exhausted by stress and early morning. Claire kept one hand on her daughter's shoulder while answering Torres's questions, physical contact that reassured them both. Your father was on our radar for years. Torres finally spoke after reviewing a third of the journal. We knew he facilitated money movement for criminal enterprises, but we could never get enough evidence for prosecution. He was too careful, too precise. This journal is basically him handing us 30 years of cases we couldn't crack. Will it be enough to protect my daughter? The question cut through legal discussion to practical reality. Torres met her eyes directly. If we move fast, establish you as a cooperating witness, get this evidence into official channels before your father's clients can coordinate response. Yes, but it requires you trusting us completely. Witness protection, possible relocation, testimony in multiple trials. I don't want to disappear. I want to live my life without hiding. Then we make you too valuable to kill. We use this evidence to arrest approximately 50 people simultaneously. We make the journal's contents public record through indictments. We eliminate the benefit of silencing you by ensuring your death accomplishes nothing. Sarah leaned forward. Legally, we file immediate motions establishing Claire's inheritance rights, blocking her brothers from accessing the estate. We use the platinum as collateral for security services until federal protection activates. We create enough legal barriers that anyone moving against her triggers automatic evidence release. The strategy crystallized. Legal action to secure inheritance. Federal cooperation to neutralize threats. Public disclosure timed to eliminate assassination incentive. Multiple layers of protection that transformed Claire from vulnerable target to dangerous adversary. How long until arrests happen? Torres checked his watch. 48 hours if we move immediately. I need to bring in my supervisor, coordinate with prosecutors, prepare warrant applications. But this journal gives us everything we need for RICO charges against your father's entire client list. My brothers are in the journal too. They've been laundering money through shell companies Dad established. Then they get arrested with everyone else. Family doesn't exempt people from consequences. The plan proceeded with mechanical efficiency. Sarah filed emergency motions with family court, establishing Claire's inheritance claim and blocking Marcus and David from estate access. Torres began coordinating federal response, photographing journal pages, making calls to prosecutors and other agents. Claire used $50,000 of her cash to retain Sarah's services and another $30,000 to hire Sentinel Security, a firm specializing in executive protection for at-risk clients. Two armed professionals, both former military, arrived at the law office within hours. Marcus called at 4 p.m., his voice tight with barely controlled fury. What did you do? We've got federal agents asking about financial records. We got attorneys telling us you've filed motions blocking estate access. You're making a serious mistake, Claire. I'm protecting my daughter and my inheritance. You should have thought about consequences before trying to steal from me. This isn't over. That evidence you think protects you? It implicates you too. Your dad's daughter. They'll investigate whether you knew about his activities, whether you benefited from criminal proceeds. The threat carried enough truth to sting. Federal investigators would absolutely examine Claire's background, looking for complicity. But her military service, her years of estrangement from her father, her documented poverty, all of it suggested victim rather than accomplice. Let them investigate. I've got nothing to hide. She disconnected before Marcus could respond, hands shaking with adrenaline, aware that she'd just escalated conflict beyond any possibility of peaceful resolution. The Sentinel security team, Corporal James Wright and Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, both Iraq veterans, took their responsibilities seriously. They swept Claire and Mia to a secure apartment the firm maintained for at-risk clients, checked for surveillance devices, established security protocols. Mia adapted to armed protection with disturbing ease, treating James and Maria like friendly soldiers rather than evidence her life was in danger. The child's resilience simultaneously impressed and broke Claire's heart. That evening, while Mia slept in the apartment's second bedroom for the first time in months, Claire sat with Sarah and Torres reviewing the coordinated plan. Warrants are being prepared for 47 individuals. Torres displayed a list on his laptop. Senator Bradley, your brothers Marcus and David Hendricks, 3 state representatives, 12 business executives, 7 attorneys, including 2 judges, and 23 others. Simultaneous arrests happened Friday at 6 a.m. That's cutting it close to my 72-hour deadline, which is why we're accelerating. Your dead man switch becomes unnecessary once arrests are public. The journal's contents will be revealed through indictments anyway. Sarah added legal context. Your brother's motion to seize estate property gets heard Friday afternoon. By then, they'll be in federal custody. The judge will likely grant you full control, given their arrest for crimes involving the estate's assets. The pieces aligned with precision that felt almost too perfect. Federal arrests neutralizing threats. Legal proceedings securing inheritance. Protection detail ensuring physical safety. Claire's impossible situation transforming into manageable challenge. But combat experience had taught her that perfect plans rarely survived first contact with reality. The attack came at 2 a.m. While Portland slept and the secure apartment security cameras recorded everything. 3 men bypassed the building's entrance using maintenance access codes, disabled hallway cameras with practiced efficiency, reached the apartment door with tools designed to defeat standard locks. They hadn't anticipated Sentinel Security's additional measures. Motion sensors triggered silent alarms. James and Maria responded with military precision, weapons drawn, positioning themselves between intruders and the bedrooms where Claire and Mia slept. The confrontation lasted 15 seconds. Commands to freeze. Movement suggesting resistance. Warning shots into walls that convinced attackers retreat was better than escalation. By the time Claire stumbled from the bedroom, heart hammering, the intruders had fled and police were responding to the building's automated alarm. Maria stood at the door, weapons still drawn, expression professionally neutral. 3 men, armed, professional entry techniques. They knew this address, knew which apartment, came prepared to kill or extract. This wasn't random. Torres arrived 30 minutes later, examining security footage that clearly showed the attackers' faces. His expression was grim. These are known associates of the Volkov organization. Russian mob connections for higher muscle. Someone in the journal hired them. How do they find us? Digital tracking, most likely. Your phone, credit cards, any electronic signature. We need to move you again, implement better operational security. The relocation happened before dawn. New apartment, new security protocols, burner phones replacing their regular devices. Mia woke during the transfer, confused and frightened, asking questions Claire couldn't answer honestly without terrifying her. Are the bad men coming back? Not if we're smart. And Mommy's very smart, remember? The child nodded, trusting despite everything, and Claire felt the weight of that trust like physical pressure. Thursday morning brought cascading developments. Sarah called with news that Marcus and David had filed criminal complaints against Claire, claiming she'd stolen platinum and forged inheritance documents. The allegations were transparently false, but created legal complications. Torres called with worse news. One of the targets in the journal, Richard Volkov, learned about the pending arrests. He's fled, possibly to Russia. If others hear and run, we lose the element of surprise. Can you accelerate the timeline? Arrests are now scheduled for tonight at midnight. Simultaneous raids across Oregon, Washington, and California. We're coordinating with U.S. Marshals and local law enforcement. It's happening, but it's rushed, which increases risk of complications. The final hours passed with agonizing slowness. Claire sat in the secure apartment with Mia, reading books, playing games, pretending normalcy, while armed security stood outside and federal agents prepared to arrest 50 people, including her brothers. At 10 p.m., Sarah arrived with documents requiring Claire's signature, authorization for FBI access to the journal, witness testimony agreements, acknowledgement of cooperation with federal investigation. Once you sign these, you're officially a witness in the largest white-collar crime prosecution organ seen in decades. There's no going back. Claire thought about her father, spending 30 years documenting crimes while slowly dying inside from guilt and fear. Thought about the inheritance he'd hidden in a broken vault, protected by mechanisms designed to ensure only she would find it. Thought about the choice he'd given her, safety through silence or justice through courage. She signed every document. Midnight arrived with precision that felt appropriate for federal operations. Torres called with updates as arrest proceeded. Senator Bradley taken into custody at his Portland residence. Judges arrested at their homes. Business executives extracted from offices and clubs and mistresses' apartments. Marcus and David Hendricks arrested simultaneously at 12:47 a.m., both at their respective Lake Oswego mansions, both reportedly shocked that their baby sister had actually followed through. By 2 a.m., 43 of 47 targets were in federal custody, for had escaped, including Richard Volkov, but their flight became evidence of guilt and triggered international warrants. Torres arrived at the safe apartment at 3 a.m., exhausted but satisfied. It's done. The journal's contents will be released through indictments tomorrow morning. Every news outlet in the state will have the story by noon. You're no longer a secret worth killing for. We're safe. You're safer. These people still have resources, still have motivation for revenge. But killing you now accomplishes nothing except additional murder charges. You've transformed from threat to public figure. That's its own protection. Sarah arrived shortly after with legal victory. Emergency hearing happened at midnight. Judge reviewed the evidence, your brother's arrest records, and granted you full control of your father's estate. The house, the business, everything they inherited gets seized as proceeds of criminal activity. You're the sole legitimate heir to whatever survives federal forfeiture. The victories accumulated but felt hollow. Claire sat in a borrowed apartment, protected by armed guards, watching news coverage of arrests that included her brothers, processing triumph that felt more like exhaustion. Mia woke at dawn, finding her mother watching sunrise through bulletproof windows. Did we win, Mommy? The question deserved consideration. They'd survived. They'd exposed criminals. They'd secured inheritance and safety. But victory suggested celebration, suggested joy, suggested something beyond the grinding relief of not being dead. We're winning, baby. Still some work to do, but we're winning. The trial preparations consumed 6 months. Claire gave testimony to grand juries, investigators, prosecutors building cases against her father's entire client network. The journal became Prosecution Exhibit A in 17 separate trials, its meticulous documentation serving as roadmap to convictions. Marcus and David both pled guilty to money laundering and tax evasion, accepting 15-year sentences rather than risking jury trials that could have meant life imprisonment. Claire felt nothing watching them sentenced except faint sadness for what family could have been if different choices had been made. Senator Bradley fought his charges through 2 trials before being convicted on 23 counts. His political career ended in courtroom tears and desperate appeals that fell on deaf ears. The man who'd wielded power casually discovered its limits when evidence was irrefutable. The platinum bars became the subject of complex legal proceedings. Federal prosecutors initially argued they represented proceeds of criminal activity subject to forfeiture. Sarah fought back with evidence that Claire's father had purchased them legally over decades, using legitimate income as insurance against the very criminals he served. The judge ultimately ruled that 3 bars would be forfeited to help fund victim restitution, while 3 remained Claire's property. The compromise meant keeping approximately $13. $5 million, less than the full inheritance, but more money than Claire could have imagined. She sold 2 bars through Victor Chen's metals exchange, converting platinum into investments that generated steady income. The 3rd bar stayed in a safe deposit box, physical reminder that security came in forms beyond bank accounts. The estate liquidation took a year. The Lake Oswego house sold for $2. $3 million. The accounting business, now contaminated by criminal association, was dissolved and its assets distributed. After federal seizures, legal fees, and taxes, Claire netted approximately $4 million from her brother's former inheritance. She used part of it to establish the William Hendricks Foundation, providing legal assistance to veterans dealing with complex inheritance disputes and financial exploitation. The irony of naming it after her criminal father wasn't lost on anyone, but Sarah argued it transformed his legacy from shame to redemption. The rest funded a house in southeast Portland. Not ostentatious, not Lake Oswego mansion, just a 3-bedroom bungalow with a yard where Mia could play and rooms that didn't echo with other people's desperation. Their first real home in nearly 2 years. Mia enrolled in public school, made friends who knew her as Claire's daughter rather than that girl from the shelter. She joined soccer, discovered she loved science, began dreaming futures that extended beyond mere survival. Claire found work as a consulting engineer, using her military expertise to help construction firms improve structural designs. The PTSD remained, triggered by unexpected sounds and crowded spaces, but therapy and stability made it manageable rather than debilitating. Rita Kowalski became an unlikely friend, the older woman who'd helped open the vault, becoming the grandmother figure Mia had never had. They shared Sunday dinners, swapped war stories from their respective service eras, found kinship in understanding that some bonds transcended conventional family. Tommy from Pearson's equipment rental got promoted to manager, partly because his discretion during Claire's crisis had proven him trustworthy beyond his years. He occasionally borrowed Mia for bring-your-kid-to-work days, teaching her machinery operation and mechanical principles. The Sentinel security team, James and Maria, remained on retainer despite the immediate threat passing. Once a month, they checked the house's security systems, updated threat assessments, maintained readiness against possibilities that probably wouldn't materialize but might. 2 years after opening the vault, Claire stood in her backyard watching Mia kick a soccer ball with neighborhood kids. The child's laughter carried across the yard, pure and unguarded, the sound of childhood finally allowed to be normal. Her phone buzzed with news alert. Marcus had been released early for good behavior, currently residing in a halfway house in Salem. David remained incarcerated but eligible for parole hearing next year. The notification carried no emotional charge. Her brothers had made their choices, faced their consequences, would live with results. Claire had stopped measuring her life against their success or failure, stopped caring about paternal approval she'd never receive, stopped trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. Sarah called that evening with final legal news. The last appeal was denied. Your ownership of all estate assets is confirmed. The foundation's nonprofit status is approved. Legally, everything's settled. Meaning you're officially wealthy, officially legitimate, officially beyond their reach. The war's over, Claire. You won. That night, Claire went down to her basement and opened the safe where she kept her father's letter. She'd read it dozens of times, memorized every word, but still found new meaning in sentences written by a man trying to apologize across the gulf of death. You're your mother's daughter. She never backed down from a fight, either. The mother Claire barely remembered, who died when she was 6, leaving her with a father who couldn't express love and brothers who measured worth in dollars. The mother whose stubbornness had apparently transferred genetically, becoming the trait that saved her granddaughter's future. Claire added her own letter to the safe, addressed to Mia, to be opened when she turned 18. Your grandfather was a complicated man who did terrible things for terrible people. But he loved you enough to build a trap that would only spring when someone with courage came along. He bet everything that I'd care enough to fight for what he'd hidden. I'm writing this so you'll understand that inheritance isn't just money or property. It's the responsibility to do something meaningful with what you're given. Your grandfather gave us wealth hidden in a broken vault. I'm giving you the knowledge that ordinary people can fight extraordinary evil when they refuse to quit. You're growing up with stability I didn't have, resources that open doors, opportunities one couldn't imagine. Use them for something that matters. Build something that helps people. Fight for those who can't fight for themselves. That's the real inheritance. Not the platinum or the money, but the understanding that you come from a line of people who survived impossible situations through sheer stubborn determination. Your loving mother, Claire, she sealed the letter, locked the safe, climbed stairs to a house that was truly hers. Mia sat at the kitchen table doing homework, occasionally asking questions about fractions and long division. Normal childhood struggles that felt like victory. Outside, Portland's autumn rain began falling, washing streets clean, nurturing gardens, sustaining life in patterns that predated human concerns about wealth and inheritance and justice. The vault sat in storage unit 247, still owned by Claire, but empty now, its secrets extracted and its purpose fulfilled. She thought about scrapping it for metal, recovering the final few $100s of value. But something stopped her. That vault had protected her inheritance for 70 years, had survived her brother's attempts to destroy it, had waited patiently for the right person to discover its contents. It deserved better than a scrapyard. So she'd arranged for it to be transported to the William Hendricks Foundation's office, where it now stood in the lobby. Empty, door open, combination lock disabled. A monument to secrets kept and promises delivered. Visitors often asked about it. Claire had a standard response. That vault taught me that broken doesn't mean worthless. Sometimes the things that look most damaged are actually protecting the most valuable contents. You just have to care enough to look. Mia finished her homework, showed it to Claire for approval, beamed when her mother praised the accuracy of her calculations. The child had inherited her grandmother's stubbornness, her mother's determination, and her grandfather's precision with numbers. What she'd do with that inheritance remained unwritten, but Claire had given her foundation to build on safety, education, resources, and most importantly, the knowledge that impossible obstacles could be overcome through courage and refusal to quit. The brothers who'd laughed when she got the broken vault were serving federal sentences for crimes that seemed less significant than Claire's victory. The criminals her father had documented were convicted or fled or dead. The inheritance that should have been worthless had transformed into wealth beyond measure. But the real treasure hadn't been platinum bars or criminal evidence or legal victories. It had been a lesson her father tried teaching from beyond the grave. That value exists in forms beyond convention. That family can be chosen as well as inherited. That love sometimes looks like preparation rather than presence. 3 years after opening the vault, Claire attended Mia's school assembly, where her daughter was presenting about their family history. The child stood at a podium that was almost too tall for her, addressing classmates and parents with confidence that came from knowing her story mattered. My grandpa was complicated. He did bad things, but he also protected something important for when the right person came along. My mom was that person. She found treasure in a broken vault because she didn't give up when everyone said it was worthless. I learned that treasure isn't just money. It's the courage to keep trying when things are hard. It's helping people who need help. It's using what you have to make things better. Our family foundation helps veterans who are dealing with hard times. We help people who don't have lawyers or money to fight when someone tries to take advantage of them. That's the real inheritance my grandpa left us. Not the stuff in the vault, but the example of protecting something valuable until someone who would use it right came along. The applause that followed was enthusiastic, but Claire barely heard it. She was watching her daughter, seeing the future unfolding in a child who understood that legacy meant responsibility, that inheritance demanded purpose, that wealth without meaning was just numbers and accounts. After the assembly, they drove home past the storage facility where everything had started. Unit 247 was now rented to someone else, containing their possessions, their secrets, their ordinary life packed into metal walls. The vault stood in the foundation's lobby, constant reminder that sometimes the most valuable things hide in the most unlikely places. Marcus and David would eventually be released, would eventually rebuild some version of lives they destroyed. They'd learned that their sister had transformed garbage into empire while they'd converted empire into ash. The lesson would sting. But Claire had stopped measuring her success against their failure. Her validation came from Mia's laughter, from veterans helped by the foundation, from nights when PTSD didn't wake her, from the simple, extraordinary victory of building a life that mattered. That evening, Claire sat in her study, a room she'd never imagined having, reviewing foundation applications. A veteran facing foreclosure because predatory lender hid terms in complex legal language. A widow whose late husband's pension was being disputed by his employer. A young soldier returning from deployment to find his savings account emptied by family members who'd stolen his identity. Each case represented someone facing impossible odds, fighting systems designed to favor powerful over vulnerable. Each one reminded Claire of her own battle, her own moment of deciding whether to surrender or fight. She approved funding for all 3 cases. The phone rang at 10 p.m. Unknown number, which usually meant scam or threat. But instinct made her answer. Ms. Hendricks? This is Federal Agent Torres. I wanted to let you know Richard Volkov was arrested in Moscow 2 hours ago. Russian authorities are cooperating with extradition. The last major player from your father's journal is in custody. The news should have felt triumphant. Instead, Claire felt only tired relief. The war had stretched 3 years, prosecutions and appeals and threats that diminished, but never fully vanished. Now, I was truly finished. Thank you for letting me know. You did good work, Ms. Hendricks. Your testimony helped convict 43 people who thought themselves untouchable. That journal saved more lives than you'll probably ever know. People those criminals would have hurt if they'd stayed operational. After disconnecting, Claire went upstairs where Mia slept in a room decorated with soccer trophies and science fair ribbons and drawings of buildings she wanted to design someday. The child had inherited her mother's engineering interest, her grandfather's precision, and something uniquely her own, optimism that the world could be fixed if you understood its structure. Claire kissed her daughter's forehead, whispered the prayer she'd learned in military chaplain's office, the one about strength for tomorrow and peace for tonight. Then she returned downstairs, poured herself the single glass of wine her therapist said was acceptable, and sat in comfortable silence of a house that was truly hers. The broken vault had held $27 million in platinum. But the real inheritance, the knowledge that ordinary people could fight extraordinary evil, that courage mattered more than resources, that family meant something beyond genetics, that inheritance was priceless. Her father had understood that, had built a test that only someone with his daughter's determination would pass, had bet everything that she'd care enough to finish what he'd started. She'd proven him right, and now she was building something that would outlast them all, a foundation that helped people fight when systems failed them, that provided resources to those who'd otherwise surrender, that transformed her father's criminal legacy into force for justice. The rain continued outside, Portland's eternal companion, washing away sins, nurturing growth, sustaining cycles of death and renewal that predated human concerns about wealth and power and inheritance. Inside, a woman who'd bought nothing and received everything sat in peace, surrounded by evidence that impossible was just another word for difficult, that broken things could protect priceless treasures, and that sometimes the greatest inheritance was simply the courage to care when everyone else had given up. The vault in the Foundation's lobby would stand forever, door open, combination defeated, secrets revealed, a monument to her father's preparation, her courage, and the fundamental truth that value existed in forms beyond measurement. Brothers had laughed when she got the broken vault. She'd laughed last, all the way to building something that mattered more than their contempt could diminish. And that, ultimately, was the greatest treasure of all. 5 years after the vault opened, Claire stood at a podium in the Oregon State Capitol, addressing a joint session of the legislature about veteran support systems and financial exploitation protections. The invitation had come from Representative Lisa Chong, one of the few legislators who'd emerged from her father's scandal untainted, who'd actually used the revelations to push for reform. The irony wasn't lost on Claire. She'd once slept in shelters and counted pennies for granola bars. Now she testified before lawmakers about policies affecting thousands. The transformation felt surreal every time she stopped to consider it. But today's testimony mattered for reasons beyond personal journey. The William Hendricks Foundation had identified a pattern over 4 years of operation. Predatory legal practices targeting veteran estates, complex schemes that stripped families of inheritance through manufactured debt and fraudulent claims. Between 2019 and 2024, our foundation documented 347 cases of veterans or their families losing inheritance to predatory practices. Claire's voice carried through the chamber, steady despite her lingering discomfort with public speaking. These weren't isolated incidents. They represented systematic exploitation by networks of attorneys, estate buyers, and financial service companies. She clicked to the next slide, showing a web diagram that would have made her father proud. Interconnected companies, shared board members, coordinated timing that suggested conspiracy rather than coincidence. We've identified what we're calling the Estate Harvesting Network, 17 companies operating across Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, specifically targeting veteran families during vulnerable moments. They use similar tactics. Offer quick cash for estate property at below market rates. Manufacture legal complications to force sales. Exploit gaps in probate law to claim assets. Representative Chong leaned forward, her expression grim. Ms. Hendricks, are you saying this is organized criminal activity? I'm saying it displays all the hallmarks of organized fraud. Our foundation has forwarded evidence to the FBI, but we need legislative action too. Stronger probate protections, mandatory disclosure requirements, penalties for predatory estate purchasing. The testimony continued for 90 minutes, Claire fielding questions from legislators who range from genuinely concerned to clearly connected to the industries she was exposing. She recognized the type, had seen them in her father's journal, people who profited from regulatory gaps and looked away from consequences. Afterward, in the Capitol building's coffee shop, Lisa Chong joined her with updates. Your testimony will help, but you've made enemies. 3 of the companies you named have significant political donors on their boards. Expect pushback. I'm used to pushback. Claire sipped coffee that tasted like government buildings everywhere, bitter and institutional. Question is whether the legislature has courage to act. Some of us do. Lisa's expression suggested she'd been fighting similar battles longer than Claire had. But courage requires cover. Public pressure, media attention, evidence so overwhelming that voting against reform becomes politically impossible. The strategy was familiar. Claire had learned it fighting her brothers, fighting her father's clients, fighting every obstacle that assumed she'd surrender when pressure increased. I'll arrange media interviews. Our foundation can provide case studies, victim testimony, documentation. You handle the legislative mechanics. They shook hands like generals planning a campaign, which essentially described their reality. Some wars weren't fought with weapons, but with legislation and publicity and grinding determination to make systems work for people instead of predators. Mia waited in the Capitol's visitor center, now 14 and unsettlingly mature. She'd grown into her grandmother's stubborn determination and her mother's analytical mind, combining them into a personality that teachers described as formidable, with tones mixing respect and exhaustion. How'd it go? The teenager looked up from her homework, advanced calculus that Claire barely remembered from West Point. We're making them uncomfortable. That's usually when change starts happening. They drove home through Salem traffic, Mia providing commentary on the day's civics lesson that demonstrated she'd been paying attention to more than just her mother's testimony. The child understood power dynamics, legislative processes, the gap between justice and law. At 14, she'd already declared her intention to attend West Point like her mother, then law school, then fix all the systems that are designed to hurt people who can't fight back. The ambition simultaneously terrified and inspired Claire. The house in southeast Portland had evolved over 5 years. What started as 3-bedroom bungalow had expanded with addition that housed foundation offices. Rita had supervised construction, ensuring structural integrity while maintaining the home's character. The office space buzzed with activity most days. 3 full-time staff members processing applications, coordinating legal assistance, managing the foundation's growing influence. Claire had initially resisted expansion, worried about losing personal connection to the work, but demand exceeded her individual capacity. Jessica Morales, the foundation's director, met them at the door with updates requiring immediate attention. Former Marine facing foreclosure despite VA loan protections. Army widow whose late husband's pension was being contested by employer claiming he'd been terminated before death. National Guard soldier returning from deployment to discover family members had emptied his accounts. Each case represented someone at crisis point, someone who'd served their country and received betrayal as reward. Each one reminded Claire why the foundation existed. I'll review the Marine's case tonight. Claire accepted the files Jessica offered. The widow needs immediate legal intervention. Call Sarah Martinez's firm. The Guard soldier needs financial forensics and probably criminal referral. Jessica nodded, making notes, already moving to execute decisions. The efficiency came from 2 years working together, learning each other's rhythms, developing trust that allowed delegation without micromanagement. Mia disappeared upstairs to finish homework while Claire settled in her home office with case files and coffee. The Marine situation was unfortunately typical. Predatory lender had targeted him specifically because VA loan protections made foreclosure difficult. So they'd manufacture default through complicated fee structures buried in contract language. Claire's phone buzzed with text from numbers she didn't recognize. You're making powerful people angry. Careful you don't end up like your father. The threat was vague enough to avoid legal consequences, but specific enough to communicate. Intent. Claire screenshot it, forwarded it to Agent Torres, who monitored ongoing security concerns, then returned to the Marine's case. Threats had become background noise over 5 years. Some came from people connected to her father's prosecuted clients, others from targets of the Foundation's investigations. A few from her brothers, though Marcus and David had mostly disappeared into post-prison obscurity. She'd learned to assess threat credibility through patterns. Specific threats with actionable details went to law enforcement. Vague intimidation went into files documenting harassment. Generic anger got ignored unless it escalated. This one felt like middle category, concerning but not immediate. Someone wanted her scared enough to back off testimony about the estate harvesting network. They'd misjudged her baseline threat tolerance, developed through combat zones and federal prosecutions. Sarah Martinez called at 8 p.m. with updates about legislative response to Claire's testimony. 3 representatives have already committed to co-sponsoring reform legislation. But the opposition is organizing too. Expect attacks on your credibility, probably focusing on your father's criminal history. Let them try. I've been transparent about his crimes. Using that against me just proves they can attack the actual evidence. Spoken like someone who's been through this before. Sarah's tone carried approval. I'm drafting the widow's emergency motion tonight. We should have temporary restraining order by tomorrow afternoon, preventing the employer from distributing pension funds until case resolves. After disconnecting, Claire stood at her office window watching Southeast Portland's evening activity. Neighbors returning from work, kids playing basketball in driveways, ordinary lives proceeding without awareness of the battles fought to protect their normalcy. Her father had enabled criminals who exploited that normalcy. She was trying to protect it. The symmetry felt appropriate, like completing a circle that had been broken by his choices and her inheritance. Rita arrived at 9 p.m., carrying wine and the unannounced visit privileges of close friendship. They sat in the kitchen while Mia studied upstairs, discussing everything from foundation strategy to Mia's increasing determination to follow military path. She's got your stubbornness and your father's precision. Dangerous combination. Rita poured wine into glasses that had come from the Lake Oswego house after estate liquidation. Crystal that had witnessed her brother's entitled celebrations, now serving redemption. I worry she's choosing military service because it's what I did, not because it's right for her. Kids always start by imitating parents. Question is whether they find their own reasons along the way. Rita studied Claire with grandmotherly concern that had become familiar over years. You didn't join the army because of family tradition. You joined because you needed to prove something. She's joining for different reasons, to fix systems, to serve, to be part of something larger. The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Claire had joined the army, fleeing her father's disappointment and her brother's contempt, seeking validation through service. Mia was joining from position of strength, with resources and options her mother hadn't possessed. When did you become so wise about parenting? Raising 3 kids and watching them make every mistake imaginable teaches wisdom or insanity. I chose wisdom. Rita grinned. Plus, I've been watching you parent for 5 years. You're doing better than you think. The media interviews began 2 days later. Local news coverage about the estate harvesting network, Claire explaining schemes in terms regular viewers could understand. National veteran organizations picked up the story, amplifying it through their networks. NPR requested interview for their weekend edition. Each appearance generated responses. Support from veterans and families who'd experienced similar exploitation. Threats from people connected to companies being exposed. Contact from other states reporting identical patterns, suggesting the network extended beyond Pacific Northwest. Jessica compiled the responses into database, tracking patterns, identifying new leads. What had started as testimony about Oregon legislation was evolving into national investigation. Agent Torres called with federal update. Your testimony caught attention at Bureau headquarters. We're opening formal investigation into the estate harvesting network. Preliminary review suggests RICO predicates. Mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. Could be looking at charges similar to your father's clients. The pattern repeating. Claire exposing criminal networks through careful documentation and refusal to be intimidated. Her father's legacy inverting from enabling crime to destroying it. What do you need from the foundation? Everything you've got. Case files, victim statements, financial analysis. We'll need cooperation from people willing to testify. And we'll need you as subject matter expert, possibly testimony if this reaches prosecution. Claire thought about the Marine facing foreclosure, the widow fighting for pension, the hundreds of other cases representing thousands of stolen dollars and destroyed futures. Thought about her own experience with brothers who'd tried stealing inheritance, with systems designed to favor powerful over vulnerable. You'll have complete cooperation, whatever you need. The investigation accelerated over following months. FBI agents interviewed foundation clients, subpoenaed records from companies in the estate harvesting network, followed money trails through shell companies and offshore accounts. Claire recognized the process from her father's case. The methodical documentation, the careful building of evidence, the patience required to construct prosecution that would survive legal challenges. But this time she wasn't victim or witness. She was catalyst and collaborator, someone with resources and expertise to support investigation rather than simply survive it. Mia watched the process with teenagers' intense curiosity, asking questions about legal procedures and investigative techniques. Claire answered honestly, treating her daughter as an intelligent observer rather than child, to shelter from complexity. Is this what Grandpa did? Documented crimes, but never reported them? The question landed with weight Claire hadn't anticipated. Your grandfather documented crimes and profited from them. We're documenting crimes to stop them. Similar skills, opposite purposes. But he left you the evidence, knowing you'd use it differently. So maybe he wanted redemption he couldn't achieve himself? At 14, Mia demonstrated insight that made Claire's chest tight with pride and fear. Pride because her daughter understood moral complexity. Fear because that understanding came from childhood spent navigating adult situations no kid should face. The Foundation's 5th anniversary gala happened in March, fundraiser that had become annual tradition. 200 attendees filled the ballroom of downtown Portland Hotel, paying $500 per plate to support veteran legal assistance. Claire wore a dress that cost more than her first car, felt uncomfortable in it, but understood the performance required. Wealthy donors expected certain presentations. Playing the part meant funding that helped people who couldn't attend galas. Sarah Martinez gave keynote address, describing cases the Foundation had won and systemic changes it had achieved. Rita received the Hendricks Award for Community Service, named after Claire's father, in continued effort to transform his legacy from shame to redemption. Mia, wearing dress she'd insisted on buying with her own money from part-time job, circulated among guests with poise that suggested she'd inherited diplomatic skills from sources unknown. Certainly not from Claire, who still felt awkward at social events despite years of practice. Marcus appeared during cocktail hour, unexpected and unwelcome. He'd served 11 years of 15-year sentence before parole, emerging thinner and harder, carrying prison's mark in ways beyond visible. Claire, his approach carried careful neutrality, someone navigating minefield. Could we talk? Just 5 minutes. Every instinct screamed refusal. But curiosity won, combined with security team's presence and public setting that limited possibilities for confrontation. They stepped onto the hotel's balcony, Portland's evening lights spreading below them, cold air creating space between them. I'm not here to cause problems. Marcus spoke first, rushing words like he'd rehearsed them. I wanted to apologize. For everything. The vault, the threats, the years of treating you like you were worthless because you didn't fit our definition of success. Claire waited, saying nothing, letting silence pressure him to continue. Prison gives you time to think about choices, consequences, the people you hurt justifying yourself. I spent 11 years thinking about how we tried to steal your inheritance, how we threatened Mia, how we became exactly what Dad enabled. People who thought wealth exempted them from consequences. You're apologizing? Claire's tone carried skepticism earned through experience. I'm trying to, not expecting forgiveness. Just wanted you to know that I understand now what you already knew. That value isn't about money or property or status. It's about character and courage and doing right thing even when it costs you everything. The words sounded genuine, but Claire had learned that sincerity and trustworthiness were different qualities. Marcus might genuinely regret his choices while remaining fundamentally unchanged. Where's David? Still inside. Parole got denied. He's got 4 more years. Took it harder than I did. Keeps blaming you instead of accepting responsibility. Marcus looked at his hands, scarred from prison work. I'm trying to be different. Got job at community college, teaching accounting to people starting over. Ironic, given my history, but apparently my father's notoriety plus my prison time make me qualified to teach ethics. Claire processed this information. Marcus teaching ethics despite being convicted of financial crimes. The absurdity felt appropriate for their family's trajectory. What do you want from me? Nothing. Just wanted you to know I'm sorry. That watching what you built from literally nothing while I destroyed everything I inherited taught me something about actual worth. He moved toward the door, then paused. Mia's remarkable. You did good raising her. Better than any of us had right to expect after the childhood we gave you. After he left, Claire stood on the balcony alone, processing the encounter. Apology didn't erase harm. Regret didn't undo theft attempts or threats against Mia. But perhaps it represented something: acknowledgement, growth, the possibility that people could change even after catastrophic failure. Inside, the gala continued. Mia found her mother returning from the balcony, read her expression with practiced accuracy. "What happened?" "Your uncle apologized. Did you forgive him?" The question deserved consideration. Claire thought about Marcus at 14, her big brother who'd sometimes protected her before their father's favoritism poisoned their relationship. Thought about the man who'd tried stealing her inheritance. Thought about the possibility that both versions were real. "I'm considering it. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or trusting. Just means releasing anger that doesn't serve me anymore." Mia nodded, processing this wisdom, filing it away for future reference. At 14, she was learning lessons about justice and mercy that most people didn't encounter until adulthood. The evening concluded with auction raising additional $200,000 for the foundation. Claire thanked donors, smiled for photographs, performed the role of successful nonprofit director while her mind churned through Marcus's apology and its implications. At home, after Mia was asleep and the house was quiet, Claire retrieved her father's letter from the safe. She'd read it hundreds of times, but tonight certain phrases caught attention differently. Your brothers failed by assuming broken meant worthless. Had they learned differently? Had prison and consequences taught them what inheritance and privilege hadn't? Marcus's apology suggested possible growth, though verification would require time and observation. Claire added note to the letter, documenting the evening's encounter for future reference. Someday Mia would read all this, would understand her family's complexity beyond simple good versus evil narrative. The FBI's investigation concluded 18 months after Claire's initial testimony. 47 indictments spanning 3 states, charges ranging from mail fraud to elder abuse to RICO conspiracy. The estate harvesting network was revealed as exactly what Claire had suspected: organized criminal enterprise that had stolen approximately $180 million from veteran families over 15 years. The prosecutions proceeded through 2028 and 2029, trials that Claire attended when schedule permitted, watching justice delivered to people who'd thought themselves untouchable through legal complexity and regulatory gaps. Several defendants tried attacking her credibility, pointing to her father's crimes as evidence she couldn't be trusted. Sarah anticipated the strategy, turned it against them by demonstrating Claire had exposed her own father's network, had no loyalty to criminals regardless of relationship. The final verdict came in November 2029. All 47 defendants convicted on multiple counts, sentences ranging from 15 to 40 years. Restitution ordered totaling $240 million, including penalties, funds designated for victim compensation. Claire testified at sentencing hearings, describing foundation cases and systemic harm the network had caused. Judges cited her testimony in explaining harsh sentences, acknowledging that crimes targeting veterans deserved particular condemnation. After the final sentencing, Torres bought her coffee at Courthouse Cafe, both of them exhausted from years of investigation and prosecution. Your father's journal took down 50 people. Your foundation's work took down 47 more. You've prosecuted almost 100 criminals through 2 major cases. That's a remarkable legacy. I didn't do it for legacy. I did it because they needed stopping. Best motivations often are that simple. Torres studied her with expression mixing respect and concern. But you've made yourself very visible, very successful, and very threatening to people who profit from exploiting vulnerable populations. Watch yourself. The warning echoed threats Claire had received throughout the Foundation's existence. She'd learned to live with background danger, incorporate security measures into daily routine, accept that fighting powerful interests meant permanent vigilance. But she'd also learned that fear couldn't be allowed to determine choices, that backing down from necessary fights meant surrendering values that defined her purpose. Mia graduated high school in 2030, valedictorian who'd balanced academic excellence with Foundation volunteer work and ROTC participation. Her acceptance to West Point surprised no one. though the appointment still made Claire's chest tight with pride and fear. The graduation party happened at the house, combination celebration and farewell. Rita, Sarah, Torres, Jessica, foundation staff, and board members, neighbors who'd watched Mia grow from shelter kid to accomplished young woman. Marcus attended, having maintained distance but steady contact over 4 years since his apology. David remained incarcerated, parole repeatedly denied due to disciplinary issues. The difference between brothers who'd started in the same place was stark. Claire's speech at the party focused on Mia's achievements, but also her character. My daughter learned early that life isn't fair, that systems often fail people who need them most, that sometimes you have to fight for what's right even when it seems impossible. She's chosen to serve in military, to continue fighting those battles, to be part of making systems work better. I'm terrified and proud in equal measure. Mia's response came with teenage confidence that had matured into young adult certainty. Mom taught me that inheritance isn't just what we receive, but what we do with it. She got broken vault and created a foundation that's helped thousands of people. I'm inheriting her example, and I plan to build on it. The evening dissolved into music and conversation, Claire watching her daughter navigate between teenage friends and adult mentors, equally comfortable in both worlds. The child who'd colored in activity books while her mother fought for survival had become a young woman ready to fight her own battles. Later, after guests departed and Mia was packing for West Point's summer orientation, Claire stood in her office looking at the wall of photographs. Foundation cases won, legislation passed, lives changed. 5 years of work that had expanded far beyond initial vision. The broken vault sat in Foundation lobby, permanent reminder of where everything started. But the real inheritance, the determination to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves, the refusal to accept that power meant immunity from consequences, the stubborn insistence that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary justice, that inheritance was multiplying. Mia would carry it to West Point, then to whatever service she chose afterward. The foundation would continue expanding, helping more veterans, exposing more predatory practices, fixing more broken systems. And Claire would keep fighting, keep building, keep transforming her father's criminal legacy into force for redemption and justice. Because that's what inheritance meant. Not money or property, or the material wealth Marcus and David had valued, but the responsibility to make the world slightly less broken than you found it, to help people who needed help, to stand against those who exploited vulnerability for profit. The broken vault had held $27 million in platinum, but the real treasure was the lesson it taught. That value exists in unexpected places, that determination matters more than resources, and that sometimes the things everyone else dismisses as worthless contain exactly what the world needs. Claire Hendricks had learned that lesson in a storage unit, fighting her brothers for inheritance they thought was garbage. Now she was teaching it to anyone who'd listen, building foundation that would outlast her and continue the work long after she was gone. That was legacy worth more than platinum, worth more than money, worth everything. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.